Greetings from Las Vegas and welcome to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with you on a Tuesday night. Glad to be representing EOG. The three letters stand for Ion Gaming, EOG.com, a website dedicated to the hearts and minds of sports bettors everywhere. And we're in a transition period at EOG. And I'm excited about the future. September 1st, you'll see a revamped website with additional features and maybe a few new faces as well. Not that we don't like the faces that are there now. James D. is listening to us tonight. So too is Cheap Seats. GameBred is on hold. He's going to ask our featured guest tonight a couple of questions regarding the math of sports betting and using computers to try and find point spread winners. That's GameBred. We'll be talking to our featured guest, ComptrBob. He's here subbing for Alan Dinkinson while Dink is away on his summer vacation. He was first at Saratoga Racecourse earlier this month. Now he's at where the turf meets the surf down at Old Del Mar, and Dink enjoying the life of a professional gambler as he travels about, does what he wants to do. And ComptrBob, I think that's the beauty of sports betting, or the beauty in gambling in general. A gambler, if he's successful, he doesn't answer to anyone. He can do what he wants, when he wants, with who he wants.
Yeah. Good evening, John. It's always a pleasure to be here. And I agree. I think it's a rough life. Somebody has once said that I think I've heard that it's the hardest way to make an easy buck.
But you've made money in your career. First, obviously, as a software developer, computer software developer, you were a trained engineer. ComptrBob is the smartest guy I know. ComptrBob is very well educated in mathematics. He's knows all about statistics, probabilities. He has advanced degrees in engineering from the University of Washington. He's into aeronautical engineering, in fact, one of the toughest degrees to capture back in the day. But, Bob, you've been very successful in your professional life. How have you done in your gambling life?
I was actually very lucky to run into a couple of guys when I wanted to take off a couple months and hang out up here at Lake Tahoe. And these guys were very good at college basketball. And so I didn't go through, I went through a period, obviously, of just recreational betting where, I would make a few bets based upon just hunches and no real statistical data. But when I started really like 20 years ago, I was lucky to run into these two guys, and they were just incredible in the first run that we had as a group. So I didn't struggle through much of what people have struggled through, and then that led me to really look into a lot of the math of sports betting, where I looked at the math of blackjack and a number of other casino games when I was in grad school. But I've done quite well 20 years ago, and it seems like each progressing year gets a little tighter and a little tougher to produce a profit.
The markets are tight. I find the pro football and pro basketball markets very tough to beat. I'm more of a college handicapper than a pro handicapper, and with that, even with the colleges now, Bob, it seems like that's toughening up. But on a Saturday college football, it's hard to find the edges we may have seen 10 or 15 years ago.
I would agree. I think, just to give you an idea, the college run that was back in 1993, I remember it pretty vividly because when you're just approached, these were two guys that we had a mutual friend, and so I didn't know these guys really from Adam. And one was located in San Jose, California, another in Chicago, Illinois. And we would get together and discuss college hoops. And back then, it seemed like those were also like the Allen Boston days, where literally plays would jump off the newspaper at you. Now it's a little bit more difficult.
Oh, and I think it's more difficult because the math guys are here and the advanced statistics. I think of Ken Pomeroy when I think of the college basketball market these days. If you're not following what Ken Pom does, he's really changed how the bookmakers and odds makers deal their numbers. They almost follow Ken Pom blindly. I think there is an edge or two still out there, however. I think injury information is big, and it's always tough to assess the injuries of certain college athletes. Maybe the pro athletes, a little easier to define their worth to each team. But in college football, college basketball, it can be difficult at times. The big injury news the last 24 to 48 hours was that Ohio State quarterback Braxton Miller will not play this season for Ohio State. He's sustained another injury to his right shoulder. He'll sit out this year and try to come back in 2015. So Ohio State's going to have to operate with a redshirt freshman at quarterback, and that'll be interesting. Pippi, an EOG contributor, gave us that news in the main forum at EOG.com, and that's the kind of information we need at EOG, information you can act on quickly. If you acted quickly enough, you could have grabbed Navy at plus 17.5 in their first game against Ohio State. Brian S. maybe had the best question, though, Bob. He was wondering about the value of Braxton Miller to Ohio State. As a mathematician, how do you go about figuring out what Braxton Miller is worth on the field there in Columbus? Brian S. started with the number 3. He thought he might be worth 3 points.
Well, it's very difficult, of course, because point spreads in college tend to be pretty nonlinear in respect to a single player. So a game like Navy, where you're laying 17, you're looking really more at the possibility of a backdoor cover. You're probably not looking at Navy getting an outright upset, although certainly we've seen a number of big dogs in college over the last couple of years upset teams with big point spreads. But generally you're looking for either a backdoor cover or a competitive game where the underdog can keep a game close. So it's very difficult to just come up with one number for a Braxton versus his replacement, because his replacement obviously is a fairly high, decent recruit, but he has nowhere near the experience and the background of Braxton Miller. So, it's very difficult. I don't think I would put a per game. I would put a per game number on it rather than just a single number.
What do you think the market will close Ohio State Navy? I mentioned the number 17.5. That was the high water mark. I saw a number as low as 16 as the numbers went away, and the sports books took that game off the board. What number do you think Ohio State Navy will close?
Very difficult to say. I would, just off the top of my head, without really having done a lot of in-depth study of Navy, because after all, a game like that depends a lot on whether the dog can keep things competitive, whether they can move the ball at all, either with a run game or with a decent passing game. Navy, of course, is not known for a decent passing game, so it's fairly easy to stop Navy if you've got superior athletes. But I would say if the opening number is in the neighborhood, like you said, it was about 17.5, I think it might reopen maybe at 14.5, and that would validate Brian S.'s type of number. The books don't like to come on the wrong side of a semi-key number like a 14, so it would surprise me if it was less than like a 13.5 or so.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with ComptrBob. A lot to come on tonight's program. Bob is going to talk about a couple of sports betting concepts in general, and then he'll go on record with a pair of plays. So stay tuned for that. That should be fun. Have Bob talk first theory and then put that theory into practice. I'll go on record with one play in Major League Baseball. Bit tonight at Coors Field. If you watched the game, it was a tough result to stomach. I had under the total of 9.5 runs. Kansas City defeated Colorado 7-4. Check the play-by-play, though, those late-inning runs at Coors. I thought put the right side into the wrong side column. And Bob, that'll happen. The handicap is pretty good, but unfortunately, I did not get the closer that I wanted. Bueno came into the ninth. Not that he's a closer, but Greg Holland, I thought if he would have started the ninth inning for the Royals, granted the score was 7-2, and they probably wanted to give Holland a little bit of a break because they've been using him a lot the last couple of weeks. So, I could see the situation, but it was a frustrating loss to watch. Yeah,
exactly, and that's why really when you're betting the full games, you need to look at the situations for the closer. Like a good example is Oakland just finished up beating the poor Mets and putting another nail in James D's coffin. They won 6-2, but Sean Doolittle, their closer, hadn't pitched in several games, I think at least 4 games, because the A's were on a losing streak, and usually the closers don't come in losing situations, but he came in a non-save situation, 6-2, just to get that extra inning of work. You also had last night, Houston Street was not available because he had pitched 3 straight games closing, and in fact he had blown the save the night before. So for closers, they're tricky. They're really trying to get them a certain amount of work, not let them get rusty, but they don't want to overwork them either.
A lot to do in the opening segment of the show. I mentioned we've got GameBred waiting patiently on hold. He wants to ask Bob some technical questions about sports handicapping. Here's a quick question from David Deneen. Just received this via text. He was wondering, Bob, about the sports books in South Lake Tahoe. What are the available sports books there, and what about the betting limits?
That's one area that I don't do a lot of betting in South Lake Tahoe. I was actually down there about a month ago to have dinner with a friend. The betting fool Tim Patterson was down in South Lake Tahoe for a couple of days. But there's Harrah's, there's the Mountain Blue, which used to be Caesars. I think there's Harvey's across the street, and the Horizon and the Lakeside Inn. So there's a number of them, and to be honest, I really don't know anymore what the limits are. I think Harrah's are typically the Harrah's limits that you would see in Reno and perhaps even in Vegas. But the Mountain Blue, I believe, is run by William Hill, but it's been so long since I just don't really go down there.
Best time of year to visit Lake Tahoe?
The best time is probably never, or it's when I'm not here. But the tourists are unbelievable on some weekends. You cannot go grocery shopping because there's so many tourists in town. But probably the best time for me, just because of the way I like the scenery, is right after Labor Day, right after all the Rugrats are back to school, and then you get a real drop off in the tourists, and it's really nice in the fall.
The best time to visit is never. I like that. Computer Bob, our featured guest, a smart guy, a funny guy too, and we're going to put him to the test right now. I always like to hear the smart guys think out loud, so we're going to play word association with Computer Bob. I'll feed him person, place, thing, and he'll give us the first word that pops into his head. We'll do this quickly. I've got 5 subjects, 5 different topics or categories with 3 subjects in each of the categories. So we'll go from U.S. cities, to sports gaming websites, to sports books here and there, sports betting personalities, and we'll finish up with some famous athletes. So, Computer Bob, are you ready for the assignment that I didn't prep you for?
I'm ready, but since there'll be no grading, I think this is just simply pass-fail, right?
Pass-fail. I'll give you, I'll review it. I'll give you my favorite answer and least favorite answer. So let's we'll judge it like that, and we'll hear what GameBred has to say about it as well. But here we go. 15 subjects. For Computer Bob, we'll hear the one word that he comes up with on each subject. We'll start with the U.S. cities. Pullman, Washington.
Cold.
Las Vegas, Nevada.
Hot.
Squaw Valley, California.
Beautiful.
Sports gaming websites is next. Eye on Gaming.
God, Kelly. One word. Geez. Complicated.
Pregame.com.
Geez. One word again.
You might not be the smartest guy I know.
No, I'm not the most extemporaneous, that's for sure. Pregame.com. I'll pass.
Roughing the Punter.
Esoteric.
Sports books here and there. One word from Computer Bob to describe sports books here and there. William Hill.
Declining.
CG Technology.
Unpromising.
Pinnacle Sportsbook.
The best.
Sports betting personalities. Alan Dinkinson.
Interesting.
Groovin' Mahooven.
Sharp.
Railbird.
Little Leaguer.
We'll finish with it. Very clever. Very clever. Now
That's not a one word, but I'm going to abbreviate it.
The final subject, famous athletes, Johnny Manziel.
Showboat.
Tiger Woods.
Has been.
Tony Stewart.
Avoid.
You came alive late, Bob. That was good. I like the showboat and the has-been for Tiger Woods. Tony Stewart, certainly a hot shot, I would say. That whole incident, Bob, let's talk quickly about that. That was big news last weekend. Your feeling on what took place there with Tony Stewart and the late Kevin Ward Jr.?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because obviously it was a dark track and he was wearing a dark suit. And personally, I think maybe Stewart saw him out of the corner of his eye and maybe tried to spray him with dirt, or Stewart was not really looking to go down to the inside of the track from the replays that I saw, which would be the logical place if you're under caution. I don't think he deliberately hit him, but we'll probably never know unless he really wants to elaborate on it.
I liked what the Little Leaguer Railbird said about it. He said a close shave gone bad. Obviously, Stewart didn't want to do what he did, but maybe he wanted to scare him. And, it was an unfortunate situation to be sure. I thought it was a great example, Bob, of why you should keep an even temperament. I mean, those are two hotheads, and we see the end result.
Yeah, I think, and part of it is, when you're that young as Ward was, Ward Jr., you tend to be a hothead, and obviously he just should have taken his medicine and chalked it up to experience and move on. But tragedies like that happen occasionally, and it's really really sad to see. And incidentally, I wanted to throw in my definition of tragedy. I think you got it kind of wrong.
Okay.
Because it really wasn't. It was a tragic choice because he had a choice that would have kept him safe, and Stewart had a choice where if he'd gone to the inside and followed the other car, he certainly would have not even put himself in that kind of a jeopardy unless Ward continued on down the track and insisted on getting in front of the car. But a real tragedy is due to our choices in life. When we make mistakes and we end up paying for them, that's kind of the meaning of the Greek tragedy.
Thanks for that clarification. I've always thought with tragedy, and I'll have to look up the word to know it better, but I've always thought, with when I think of human tragedies, when Mother Nature wreaks havoc on humans. I think.
See, that's not a tragedy.
That's not a tragedy. Okay.
No, that's an act of nature, or if you want to, an act of God, and that's not due to your own human frailties, your own human failings. That's what a tragedy is. Something that happens bad because of our own frailties.
ComptrBob, our featured guest, joining us on the phone line right now, a young handicapper with a lot of promise. We see him at EOG.com a lot. He's in the main forums, usually quizzing some of the sharpest guys around. That's GameBred. He's been on the program before. GameBred, good evening and welcome to the show.
Thank you, J.K. Good evening, J.K. Good evening, ComptrBob. I appreciate the time. I can't wait to engage with CB. Should we just go? Because we're short on time.
We are. You know what? We'll bypass the first commercial break of the program so you can have time with Bob. I just had one question for you, GameBred. Sure. It deals with that word association. Bob passed on pregame.com. If you had to give one word that described pregame, what would it be?
Pre-scam.
Very well. And your background, GameBred, in sports betting?
I've been taking it seriously for about 6 years. Like everyone else, I just turned 40, so I'm not that young, JK. I was doing it since I was 18, but only started taking it seriously about 6 years ago. 5 years ago, I came out with a 5-year plan to basically become a pro. So that's kind of where I'm heading. It's not that far away, which is why I'm, basically trying to pick. I'm trying to surround myself with 3 or 4 people I want to become the average of. And I've done that in some ways, and I'm just trying to, whatever sharp guys will give me crumbs off their table, I'll gladly pick it up. People that want to win, they'll win. If they don't want to win, they'll make excuses. And I want to win, so.
Mm-hmm. From who have you learned thus far?
I'd say my biggest mentor has been Groove Mahooven. Another guy named Lloyd Christmas. That guy's Lloyd Christmas is probably the sharpest game I've ever met in my life. It's not even close, unequivocally, and he has records to back that up. He's amazing.
So Groove and Mahooven and Lloyd Christmas helping you along. I see Lloyd Christmas's avatar every now and then at EOG.com. He posted at pregame.com a lot, did he not?
Yeah, he's back now. Yes, he did. He's basically the resident sharp there. And he left for a little while, and now he's back, and they're better for it. He's a great contributor. If you read everything the guy writes, you can't help but become sharp at some point, just by osmosis.
Your questions for ComptrBob.
Hey, CB, thanks for the time, man. I just want to do a quick review and go over some plowed ground here. Now, when it comes to systems building, we develop our hypothesis using certain data, the in-sample data. Then we use the untainted out-of-sample data to perform our statistical test on, and you recommend a t-test. Would that be correct?
That's one way, yes. I mean, I think you have to be careful of trying to force everything into a normal distribution. Obviously, there's cases, depending on what you're analyzing, where the distribution is not normal at all. It could be a Poisson, it could be any kind of a skewed distribution. So I do not just automatically assume normal distributions.
Great. You anticipate me, because my follow-up was going to be, is it never not appropriate to use these tests to the data we are testing not follow the normal curve? Fantastic. Thank you. Now, closing line value, CB, we want to measure it in terms of win percentage, not points. But don't we also want to compare it to the no vig line as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you want to...
Okay, I didn't know that. That's the Groove. And I got that Groove and posted another forum, like, I've been comparing CV all this time, and they have been using no vig. I felt really dumb. But, okay, so now I know. Okay. So you do
well, not
want to
only,
know
let me also say that there's not, although it's not, I don't actually use the no vig line. I use the break-even midpoint between two lines, because they're not quite the same. They're almost exactly the same, but the difference is no vig essentially evens out the vigorish between two bets, betting one side or the other between a split line, a money line, and the break-even probability splits things exactly down the middle in terms of probability. So they're slightly different.
And then, did you calculate them differently? I mean, I thought no vig was the implied win probability. The true, if it's
they're calculated slightly differently. Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to follow up later with something on that. Now, I'm quoting you here. Let me know if I'm misquoting. Quote, statistics need to be understood in terms of the assumptions that are being made before launching into a particular analysis using statistics, end quote. Now, for me, the operative word there is assumptions. If I'm doing a statistical test, I'm going to assume in my hypothesis that nothing's going on, that the results are purely due to chance. If that's not the case, the p-value will tell me that. Is that the proper assumption? I mean, what assumptions are we talking about? Is it very complex? Can it be explained in 30 seconds to a minute, or?
No, I think you're basically, your hypothesis, the best you can, has to be devoid of your own biases. So, you have to be honest with yourself, essentially, and propose a hypothesis that you really do not think is biased.
Okay. JK, can I continue, or we wrap it up?
A couple of more questions, and then I'll ask you a question, GameBred, before you leave us. So we're going to get gambling tips from ComptrBob in the second half of the program. He's got a few general gambling tips, and I want to ask you too, GameBred, maybe the one sports betting tip that you've learned from either Grooven Mahooven or Lloyd Christmas, but fire away with a couple of more questions for Bob.
I was hoping you could share his thoughts on the question I posted on linear models, specifically regression in sports investing. I mean, how applicable are they? Do we just use them because they're relatively easy? I mean, I understand that I'm a cumulative learner, but I'm pretty good with linear regression. But are there non-linear models that can be used and that would be more appropriate in sports investing, or does the question make sense, Bob?
Well, just a little background for people, because I would guess most of our audience doesn't even have any idea what a linear regression is. You can think of it kind of as curve fitting. So if you've got a bunch of dots on a paper of X versus Y that kind of look like a straight line, you draw a line in between them, and you try, in many cases, you try to minimize the least squares. In other words, you try to minimize the distance of the points taken as a group to find a linear fit for those dots on the paper. That's essentially the idea behind a linear regression. And the problem with really a regression analysis when it comes to sports betting is because it really doesn't make any distinction between correlation and causation. In other words, you can get results where you're essentially making predictions, but your independent variable is dependent on the dependent variable. So your assumptions essentially end up being wrong, and it's very hard to know in sports betting. But you can use it in certain cases. I generally don't recommend it for people because unless you truly understand the nature of the causation in results of sports betting, it can be a little bit misleading, the results.
Last question, GameBred?
Okay. Would there be any significance? This is a complete hypothetical. Completely. Would it be any significance if like a subset, say like the 2011 MLB, the 105 to 130 dogs had a negative 6% ROI. But let's say you pivot your picks in Excel and you find out that with that subset you had a 1.5% ROI. Like that didn't happen to me. I'm just giving a hypothetical. You had a 1.5% an hour. Would that be significant? The fact that you're picking winners out of a losing subset, a strongly losing subset? Would that have any significance at all, or is it just
well? Again, you have to go back to your hypothesis, why you chose that particular set of data. And what I usually recommend is to find an out-of-sample set of data. We've said this before, and if that happens for a particular year, go back and test it for 10 different years and see if there's a pattern. And chances are, with almost everything that's data mined, there's not a pattern. But if there is, then you might have stumbled upon something that really, truly does have statistical significance. I went back to 2006. That wasn't processed in 2006, and I just want you to know, because I respect your opinion. I didn't data mine this. I just checked on it after I started doing it. But what if that subset, let's say, was negative 6% ROI, but what you picked, the picks that you picked in that subset, they end up being like 1.5% or 2% positive ROI. Does that say anything about a handicapper that he's betting into basically a negative ROI subset, but he's coming out with positive results? So does that say anything about the capper? Sure.
It does. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, once the data set becomes big enough, it means that capper has incredible insight, because he's picking into a negative subset. But again, what you do is you take that capper's picks and you've found this particular performance. Now start accumulating out-of-sample data. In other words, you keep following him and see if he regresses back to what the average of the data set might be, or if he maintains his advantage.
Who was that capper, GameBred?
Oh, no, that was hypothetical. That was a hypothetical. That was a complete hypothetical. But Bob, couldn't we just Z-test the capper and boom, and we'll know?
What's
so
that?
Z-test, if he's 2 standard deviations or above, we know, hey, it's statistically significant. It's 5% at 5%. The Z-test, who does it? Conquerist talks about that. That's where I learned about it. Just do a Z-test to see how good they are, the capper. Would that help, too, as well?
Well, again, that would give you a data point, but again, you don't know how biased that hypothetical was. I mean, to just come out with any kind of a data mine based upon something that doesn't really make much sense is somewhat suspect, and so. Again, I think you have to look at out-of-sample data rather than just a simple number for the Z-test. But, that's effectively the rationale I gave for a confidence level. Just a capper that is at 53% win percentage, say, against minus 110 lines, you would have to have on the order of 10,000 picks in order to have a 95% confidence level that you're within 1% of this true win rate. So,
yeah, that seems so excessive to me. I still haven't quite digested that. That just seems so excessive. Why do you need that many samples? I mean, basically they say you can do after like 25, you can do a normal table. I mean, I know with picking, we need a lot more. But I think it probably 1,000, 2,000 would give us. But that threw me for a loop when he said that. I still haven't looped my head around it. Why do we need so many samples to tell how good someone is?
It depends on your confidence level. I mean, it depends on the confidence level and the confidence interval. The confidence level in my example is 95% that he's within 1% of his mean that he's exhibited so far. So if you only want an 80% confidence level or one standard deviation, 68% confidence level, the number is going to come down. On the other hand, if let's say he's at 62%, well, then you need far fewer samples to know that he's a winning capper. In other words, he's greater than 52.4.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with ComptrBob. GameBred has been a contributor on tonight's program. We thank him for not only his questions to ComptrBob, but when he contributes to our website, too, EOG.com. It adds to the smart, sophisticated community there, and we need all the smart, sophisticated guys we can get right now. GameBred, before you leave us, give us the single best gambling lesson you've learned, either from Grooven Mahooven or Lloyd Christmas, your two mentors.
Oh, I mean, there's so much they've taught me. Basically, increase your number of outs. Handicap the markets. Spend as much time look at the markets as you do capping the games. Ruby's taught me to think for myself. I remember one time we were with another sharp capper, and I said, capper said something about points in the NBA. I said, I 100% agree with this. And then Grooven came in and said, no, not so fast, fellas. He was very cool about it. And I went back, and I spent hours researching. We went back and forth. He was 100% right. So it was basically to question my own assumptions. And they both taught me a lot. I'm kind of embarrassed that I can't say one specific thing. If I could go to my notes, I could tell you a million things. But I get 50 different things in my mind right now, too, JK. I'm doing stats, probability, R, Excel. I'm doing, studying Betfair markets, stuff like that. So, but
what was it that What was it that Grooven told you about NBA points? What was that topic? What was that discussion again, if you would?
It was probably about a year and a half ago. Something about the value of a number in another post. I'm not going to mention his name. He's known as a sharp. Said something about something. I think it was a valuable point. I said, I 100% agree. Like, I wouldn't buy off this, so it's not worth this. Or I'd buy this for 10 cents. And then Grooven came in and said, ooh, not so fast, guys. And I said, this is interesting because I'm pretty sure I'm right. But I examined the evidence. I'm like, wow, he's completely right. And he's very cool. I asked him a lot of dumb questions, to be honest, looking back on it. He's very cool about it. Never made me feel like an idiot. And I appreciate it. He's a good guy. Yeah, he's a really good guy. He's my favorite poster. I mean, Lloyd and Grooven, my mentors, but he's my favorite poster.
GameBred, thanks for the time. We'll chat with you down the road and see you at EOG.
JK, CB, thank you very much for taking the time to answer questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, GameBred.
GameBred calling in, and always good to get him to contribute to the show and the website. ComptrBob, we still have a lot to cover on tonight's program. I know you wanted to get to a couple of general sports betting concepts for us before you get into the specific selections.
Well, before that, if you don't mind, you also promised that we would talk about the number of penalties in preseason, the question that was raised on the forum.
Yes, the number of penalties in the preseason.
By Drink Your Milkshake, I believe.
Yes, Drink Your Milkshake posted if you played all the overs, was it in the NFL exhibition season and week 1 of the NFL season, do you think you would come out on top? That was, I think, Drink's question. Right.
And there was an interesting graphic that ESPN put up on the Redskins-Browns game last night, and it showed essentially that over the last 5 years, the preseason number of penalties per game was roughly about 13. I'm just going to round off numbers here, but there were almost 19 penalties per game in this year's preseason through the first 32 games. So almost 6 penalties or almost 50% more penalties in preseason. And then they showed that during the regular season, it dropped off roughly about 10%, or roughly maybe about 1.2 penalties per game in the regular season. So if that percentage is anywhere close, it means that we're in for roughly 17.5 penalties in a regular season game versus about 12.5, and that would be, it's almost made preseason unwatchable. That would be an astonishingly high number of penalties, and I think would significantly change the game because you'd be talking about an average of 5 penalties more. Now, some of the penalties have been really stupid. Jimmy Graham doing 2 dunks, he's obviously going to eliminate those during the regular season, but that's a very small amount. So I do think it's a very important, but I can't imagine the officials not being told to tone it down.
What effect do penalties have on point production in the National Football League?
Well, it depends, obviously, what kind of penalties are being called, because obviously if you're calling offensive pass interference, which is extremely rare these days, you would retard the offenses. But what we're seeing is a lot of illegal contact, a lot of defensive penalties, roughing the passer, where the passer is being hit a couple hundred milliseconds after the quarterback releases the ball. If those continue to be called, and those are automatic first downs, those are personal fouls, you'll find teams that are able to sustain a lot of drives. So you'll see, a lot of touchdowns if there's illegal contact in the end zone, and even a lot of field goals, because a lot of teams will be able to sustain drives. You also probably see a lot fewer punts, especially out of the teams that already have a good offense.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with ComptrBob, talking sports and sports betting. We'll get to selections in a moment. Want to say hello to Big Daddy Boucher. Chi-Town Joe just made a recent post at EOG saying that the Cubs are thinking of finishing a game, and it's around midnight there in Chicago. The game was delayed by rain. There's already a 3-hour rain delay. The Cubs were leading the Giants 2-0 in the 5th, so that's still in the balance. ComptrBob, sports betting concepts.
Oh, incidentally, in that Cubs game, I was watching it on Comcast because I get the San Francisco Giants, and the Chicago crew that put out the tarp needs to be retrained, because they missed second base on the first time out, and it was a complete disaster. They had a very short rain, and I think it was like about 20 minutes. They rolled the tarp such that the water just rolled out back into the infield. So it's a complete cluster, and I won't say the second word.
I know where you're going. Heim at EOG.com, he posted the American League team that leads in runs scored since the All-Star break. Any guesses? Boy, this is tough to nail. An American League team that scored the most runs since the All-Star break.
Well, I would guess it's not the Yankees. I know they're like in a real struggle to score. It's amazing. There are a lot of teams that are really struggling. It's probably a long shot, like the Astros or the Texans or the Rangers.
Go to the head of the class, Houston Astros. They won tonight in New York. 7-4 was the final. Carter with a big home run. But, the Astros have scored the most runs in the American League since the All-Star break. Bob, sports betting concepts that you wanted to get across to our audience.
Well, last night you and Mike Corrigan talked a little bit about stock investment, and I do some stock investment, and that's the way I make a lot of capital gains and income. And in stock investment, you want to really diversify your portfolio, especially if you don't have your own business that you can invest in. In sports and in gambling, we want to do really kind of the opposite of diversification. We want to specialize, focus. Railbird brought up a good point that if you're trying to do, advantage betting and coupon clipping and running all over town, it's really tough to do handicapping too. And in the case of John Kelly, I know having to fend off a lot of angry posters and devote a lot of time to the more mundane parts of EOG cuts into your handicapping time as well. So, we all have those diversions, and in sports, that's one reason why I watch hockey for entertainment. I watch horse racing for entertainment at a real minimum level. But when the sports that I do handicap, I try to really put a significant amount of analysis into it.
And the second sports betting concept that you wanted to get across?
Well, I think a lot of it, again, going back to stocks, you want to really consider the time value of money. You want to be in it for the long run. You realize that a male that's currently 30 years old is typically going to live another 52 years. So you want to invest for the long term. In sports, we tend to really bet on the short term. Obviously, want to take positions. Most of the time, the longest position we'll take is on a Sunday night for a football game. Many people will bet, regular season win totals and even like the funky prop bet that James D got about the Mets climbing back to 50% sometime during the season. But that's a relatively long bet that could last till the end of the season. So we do have to recognize that if we tie up our money into some of these future bets and regular season win totals, we really should be fairly certain that there's a positive expected value for them.
Let's step aside and take the final time out of the program. When we return, we'll put Computer Bob on the spot. We'll ask him for a couple of plays in the next couple of days. We'll see if he goes with Major League Baseball, maybe the WNBA postseason. There's Week 3 in the NFL available to him. College football games are up and available for the first weekend of college football action. We'll see which direction he goes when we return here on the EOG Sports Hour.
There's no such thing as a sure thing, unless you're talking about Ion Gaming. Ion Gaming is a website dedicated to the hearts and minds of sports bettors everywhere. If you're looking for smart, sophisticated sports handicapping information and insight,
go to EOG.com.
If you're looking for the latest news on the ever-changing landscape of Nevada's race and sportsbook industry,
go to EOG.com.
If you're looking for the most recent developments involving the worldwide sports betting scene with an emphasis on the leading sports books in San Jose, Costa Rica,
go to EOG.com.
And finally, if you're looking to join an online community of sports gamblers where registration is free and the information is priceless,
go to EOG.com.
You get the idea. Why gamble on other sports betting websites when Ion Gaming is a sure thing?
And I love a sure thing.
Here she comes now, saying morning, morning.
Time now for the JK Play of the Day. This is John Kelly's single strongest recommendation against the current numbers at the M Resort here in Las Vegas.
Let's get it back where we lost it tonight. Go to Coors Field, game 929, 930, Kansas City and Colorado under that same total of 9.5 runs. Duffy and De La Rosa. Kadire did not play tonight to hamstring tightness, soreness in his hamstring. Morneau was in the lineup, but of course the Rockies are playing shorthanded without Tulowitzki or Cargo. And if you look at that Colorado lineup, I know it's Coors Field, and they scored a lot of runs on Sunday in the twin bill against Cincinnati, but I don't think they'll produce many runs against Danny Duffy, who's had an outstanding season. Don't look at the one-loss record of 8-10. Look at the ERA. Some of the other peripherals, too, point to Danny Duffy being sneaky good. In his last 7 starts, he's gone 3-2 with a 2.13 ERA. I think the two lefties hook up in a duel. 5:40 Pacific time start at Coors. I'll go under the total of 9.5 runs. Bob, we have about 5 minutes remaining in the program. I'm interested in hearing a couple of your selections.
Well, JK, I'm going to go with 2 baseball games, and maybe if I'm on next week we can talk about some college football. There are some opinions I have, but we do have a week to go in the college football with the kickoff games, I believe, starting August 28th. Is that correct?
Yes, August 28th is the first day of the college football season. It's a Thursday. Before you get to the two plays, quickly, what's your biggest edge in college football? Where do you find point spread winners?
I think I really analyzed coaching and personnel changes for a matchup that I particularly like to look at. And a matchup, first of all, I look at the general card and see if I see a line that I think is out of whack. Then I'll put some numbers to it and try to determine if there's a probability distribution that's favorable for me. In other words, if I'm looking for a favorite, I'm looking for a team that really could dominate their offensive line. That will dominate, and they'll be able to control the ball. Although time of possession isn't that great in college football analysis, but I generally try to look at favorites that are going to have no problem with the point spread, and then I try to look at competitive dogs where I think a team really like a Navy against an Ohio State will be able to control the ball. I'm not so sure that's going to happen. So I'll maybe have an analysis later on that one.
Your bets for tomorrow?
Well, my bets, if anybody's been listening to the show, are going to be somewhat repetitive. I like your analysis of the Kansas City-Colorado game, and I'm going to go with the left-hander Duffy. I think also tonight Greg Holland, the closer, did come in for one pitch, so I think he will be available. Both Davis and Herrera had 17 pitches, so I think they'll probably also be available. Might be a close game, but I think there's a lot of value with Duffy at minus 118 over Colorado and De La Rosa.
So the Royals minus $1.18, the first of two picks. The Kansas City Royals are 70-55 on the season. They're 15 games over 500 for the first time since 1994. It's been a fun team to watch this season. Your second play, Computer Bob.
Well, I can also add that the Royals have a better record on the road than they do at home, and the Rockies have a slightly losing record at home. So when I just think the Royals continue on. They've now got the lead in the AL Central, and Detroit's playing better, but I think the Royals will keep it. And my second play is a pitcher by the name of Garrett Richards, who pitches for the Los Angeles Angels. They're currently leading also the American League West over the Oakland A's. Both those teams are playing exceptionally well. And again, Richards is laying, I think, on the order of minus 133 or so on the road against Boston, a Boston team that really doesn't even look like they're interested too much in playing. I think Los Angeles is playing very well here. The Angels, Houston Street got the save tonight. And I just think there's value in Richards at a fairly low price.
Computer Bob, thanks for the time. Bob gave us two plays on tonight's program, both small road favorites. Will root home the Kansas City Royals over the Colorado Rockies in interleague play, and the LA Angels of Anaheim over the Boston Red Sox in a game at Fenway Park tomorrow evening. Bob, thanks for the time. Until next Tuesday.
Well, thank you, JK. It's been a pleasure, and thanks again to GameBred and all the contributors at EOG who have posed very enlightening questions.
Tomorrow night, Ed the Statman joins the program. Thursday night, it's Mark Ratner, former executive director of the Nevada Athletic Commission. Now he's with the UFC. And Friday night, we wrap up the week with Eric Strasser, a.k.a. Palm Tree, talking Major League Baseball. Next week on the program, Kevin Stott is already committed to an appearance. And also, Tony Vega. He's a casino host at Boulder Station. Knows a thing or two about sports and horse racing.